Last week in Michigan politics, as election season draws closer, local officials taking to the community to educate people on how the election process works, what they had to say, and as they answered the public's questions. Plus, community members raising concern over access to fair housing at a hearing in Grand Rapids, why some say it's time for a change. And touchdown for some health advocates at the NFL draft this past weekend as the governor signed into law new requirements for emergency plans in our schools. I'm Josh Alburtus, and this is your 13 on your side rundown. And we begin with your voice, your vote, and what's being done to show voters how elections work. On Tuesday, local election officials gathered in Lowell to educate people about our voting system. We were there and have the details.
I want more than anything for our voters to have faith in that system, to have trust in the process and confidence in the outcomes of the election.
Questions and answers as local election officials and experts gathered in Lowell Tuesday at a meeting hosted by the group Keep Our Republic to tell the community how the election process works. From local clerks who oversee local elections to a local poll worker who credited the chance to see the system for herself for her confidence in local practices.
It's knowing all the things, and through those invitations that you graciously extended to me, I got to know a lot more about the checks and balances that your office has in place.
Checks and balances the county clerk laid out for voters. Things including canvasses and random audits to ensure the accuracy of results.
That's where we'll go through all of the absentee ballot applications, all of those kind of things, and including a hand tally of the ballots in that precinct. Just once again, to ensure that the election was accurate. Officials
answering questions from audience members about different parts of the process. But with concerns swirling in recent years over new factors like artificial intelligence and how to best keep elections safe amid disinformation, some put a point on what they feel is the importance of having discussions like this one.
We can always do better. We should strive to do better. But I'm telling you, our elections in Kent County, our process in Michigan, helps to ensure that our elections are secure, transparent, fair, and accurate.
Also in election news, former West Michigan Congressman Peter Meijer has announced he is ending his campaign for the U.S. Senate. In announcing his decision on Facebook, Meijer, who served one term in the U.S. House, said without a strong pathway to victory, his campaign only increased the likelihood of a divisive primary come August, which he believes would distract from a goal, he says, of a conservative victory in November. With Meijer's withdrawal from the race, there are still a number of candidates running for the GOP nomination to replace outgoing Democratic Senator Debbie Stabenow. And Kentwood voters will decide on a proposal next week for increased funding for police and fire services. City leaders say a permanent increase of nearly $2 million would provide critical support for police and fire. The money would be used to hire additional staff and maintain response times. As the city of Kentwood continues to grow, the demand for police and fire services, they say, has also risen.
Due to minimum staffing, we might only have 3 officers and a sergeant on for the entire city of Kentwood. And so if you're looking at about almost 58,000 residents, not to mention those who work here and come here to shop, there's a definite need to increase that. So from the police department standpoint, we're looking to increase that minimum at least to 5 so that we can have officers respond.
A forum on Monday was intended to be an open discussion where community members could get more information about the ballot proposal, ask questions, and share their thoughts. In-person voting for the proposal is on May 7th. The Federal Trade Commission voted last week to ban most non-compete agreements in the U.S. Those stop employees from going to competing businesses and employers for a certain amount of time after they leave this job. We break down what this decision could mean for you. From salons to sales departments and many industries across the country, Americans often find that after they leave one job, they may not be allowed to go directly to the next. That's because of what are called non-compete agreements. These agreements keep people from working for a competing employer for a certain amount of time after they leave their current job.
The substantive basis on which, the most employers seek to enforce a non-compete agreement is to preserve, the goodwill and relationship that their employees have developed with their customers, and preserve, the economic advantage they have from their own methodology of doing things.
The Federal Trade Commission estimates that roughly 30 million workers in the U.S. have them, but under a new rule passed by the FTC, non-compete agreements for most workers would no longer exist.
It makes illegal all non-compete agreements for all employees in the private sector, with the exception of senior executives who earn over $151,000 and are currently subject to non-compete agreements.
Mark Smith, who works in employment law at a local West Michigan firm, said the effects of the rule could be swift.
It would have an immediate impact in terms of the mobility of employees from place to place. If the employees are left to their own devices and there are no non-competes in place, I think you're going to see a lot of people, chasing dollars and going from job A to job B.
The FTC has argued the move will spur more innovation and new businesses, among other potential benefits. But not everyone is on board. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce has already announced it will sue to stop the rule, alleging the FTC is overstepping its authority. Given likely legal battles, Smith believes getting the rule in place may take longer than may be expected.
If it does take effect, it would take effect 120 days from the date that is published in the Federal Register. I have to say, though, that I think we are months, if not years, from this rule taking effect.
To Kent County now, a proposed tax increase for visitors staying at hotels in the county could help pay for a new aquarium. A bill signed by the governor in April would allow Grand Rapids to levy a 2% tax on hotel and motel stays and let the county hike the current 5% tax to 8%. But in order for that to take effect, voters would have to approve the plan first. The idea is visitors will help pay for projects like the amphitheater, soccer stadium, and a new aquarium instead of the residents. Mayor Rosalind Bluth says tourism has rebounded since the pandemic, with hotel revenue at record levels.
And it's exciting to me that in addition to, potentially investing in a publicly owned soccer stadium, we also have the opportunity to potentially have an aquarium here in our city. So it's been talked about for a couple years now. John Balzoo talked about it a couple years ago and moved forward with a feasibility study. And I just think it's this incredible opportunity for our community.
We are not able to find out yet where the aquarium would be built or how much it would cost. Fair housing was the concern for many attending a recent public hearing on housing discrimination. This meeting was hosted by the Michigan Civil Rights Commission. Issues like racial, gender, and disability discrimination were discussed at the meeting, and many people we spoke to say it's time for a change. 13 on Your Side's Kiara Patterson has the story.
Everyone should know fair housing, and that is a daunting and yet crucial task, especially since so many struggle to find housing in good repair that's affordable, accessible, let alone housing that they should be able to freely choose.
The Michigan Civil Rights Commission hosted a public hearing on housing discrimination in Grand Rapids to address the community's concerns. Sunday's meeting was the third of 4 Fair House-based hearings that have taken place all around Michigan. The chair of the board says Michigan residents have come to her team with a variety of housing issues.
People have been coming to us and telling us about issues with being able to rent a house that has access for them if they are handicapped or if they have children. And some of them have had issues with the quality of their rentals, which means that we refer them to another state agency. What we are focused on is civil rights access to housing.
Nothing was resolved at the meeting, but all the community's concerns were addressed by the board. One main point Grand Rapids residents raised was the concern over affordable housing.
Grand Rapids, our median, according to our Data USA, is $55,000. However, in Grand Rapids, the average salary is $37,000. That's $17.81 an hour. That's well below the poverty level. Per the article in Redfin, Grand Rapids is a good place to be. However, you need to be within those guidelines in order to afford it.
The chair of the board says the housing issues are the same no matter what part of the state you are in.
We have the same issues all across the state, which is both good and bad. It's good because we can actually, by trying to solve some of these issues, it affects everyone in the state. And it's bad because they're having these issues. And a lot of these issues are the same whether you're in an urban environment, in a suburban environment, or out in the rural environment.
People living on Grand Rapids' west side say they're not happy with a proposed plan to require them to pay to park in front of their own homes. The neighborhood potentially affected is near the John Ball Zoo. 13 on Your Side's Lauren Baker explains how the program would work and how neighbors she spoke to feel about it.
We all know the struggle of trying to find that perfect parking spot, whether it's in front of our house or at a friend's house. But what if that perfect parking spot came with a cost? For some, that could become a reality. City leaders are driving around the idea of adding the residential parking permit program to the southwest neighborhood near John Ball Zoo in Grand Rapids. But some of those who live and visit the area often.
So I definitely think it would be more of a drag and obviously more expensive.
Want that possible plan to back out of the neighborhood. That includes neighbors like Josie Stauffer.
I live here and we already pay rent, so I don't feel like we should have to pay park on a public street.
Under the plan, residents would pay $30 a year for a permit to park and could pay $2 a day for a visitor permit for a limited number of visitors. That could affect people like Dennis Coyne. He visits the neighborhood often to help his sister with her garden and parks on the street.
I would not like the idea. I could park in her driveway, but that would be an inconvenience for the people walking up and down the sidewalk.
The same goes for Nanny Milena Koprivica, who learned about the possible plan from the family she works for.
I think it's just a headache because the zoo's right there and these parks are right here, so it would just cause people to walk further if they're not able to pay for parking.
The plan isn't official as the city is set to have a hearing on it, but if it was up to these neighbors, the plan would stay parked right where it's at.
And Governor Whitmer signed new bills in Detroit at the NFL draft that will require all schools to have a detailed plan to respond to students and staff who have a heart attack or other cardiac emergency while at school, including at athletic events. 13 on Your Side's Jeremiah Brown has the story.
We see things moving in the right direction, and this is just another one of those big steps.
In 2011, 16-year-old Wes Leonard passed away from sudden cardiac arrest after making the game-winning shot at his high school basketball game in Fenville.
We wanted to do something different to help people be more prepared.
His family, former coach, and friends created the Wes Leonard Heart Team and have raised money to donate close to 600 AEDs to Michigan schools and have been spreading education and training for responding to cardiac emergencies.
I never want a coach to feel like how I felt after Wes passed.
At the NFL draft, Governor Gretchen Whitmer signed into law bills that will require all schools to have a detailed cardiac emergency response plan with a response team of trained staff members to be standing by at all school and athletic events to perform CPR and use an AED. All coaches will also have to be certified to respond to cardiac emergencies.
23,000 cardiac arrests that happen every year in the United States that are children under the age of 18, and 40% of those are athletic event related.
The two bills signed today are just going to bring the ability to not only save the athlete, but they're going to save more students that are just around the school. They're going to save more spectators, more parents, more staff.
Klingler hopeful that these bills will continue the state's progress of becoming more prepared and responding to cardiac arrests at schools and saving more lives.
In schools right now, just this year, there have been 7 cardiac events that have been associated with schools around Michigan. And most of them ended in saves. The awareness to be prepared is continually growing, and we're going to see more saves because of that.
And that's the rundown for your week in Michigan politics. Be sure to keep up with all the top political stories of the day, both on air and online at 13onyourside.com. We'll see you next week.